Hello, my name's Laura and I'm 35 years old. I just recovered from something very traumatic and today I want to share my story with you. My story starts with my ex-husband Johnny and his mother, Deborah. Johnny and I met when we were in college. We got along really well and started dating fairly quickly after we met each other. We dated for around 4.5 years before getting married. Our relationship was generally great, but there was one person who always made me feel like crap, and that was my mother-in-law, Deborah. Deborah made it crystal clear to me the day that Johnny introduced me to her that she hated me. She would go out of her way to insult me whenever she could. It would hurt like hell, especially because I knew that I wasn't very conventionally pretty. Still, I believed that Johnny loved me for who I was, and that was enough to soothe me. After around 2 years of being married, I quit my job to start my own business with my best friend. It was very risky, but Johnny supported my decision, and within a year, the business started taking off. It was a slow and steady growth, but it was growth nonetheless. Over the next 2 years, the business began to experience large amounts of profits, and that meant that Johnny and I were living more than comfortably. Of course, you'd expect that to change the way that Deborah treated me, at least a little bit. But she was still the same. She would belittle all my achievements and would even yell at me for emasculating her son. Johnny would always remain silent during her tirades, and I guess that was what led to the downfall of our relationship. We began to argue a lot because I felt like he never stood up for me or even cared enough to do it. He would tell me that he couldn't talk to his mother that way, but all I heard was a pathetic excuse. Our fights only increased, and before I knew it, we were barely talking to each other. It was around this time that I found out that Deborah had been trying to set Johnny up with multiple other women. I found out because I happened to see the text come up on Johnny's phone when he was in the shower. I went through their chats and saw them talking a lot of smack about me. Johnny kept trying to tell Deborah to stop setting him up with women initially, but gradually he began to actually be picky with the women his mother sent him pictures of. I went to sleep, upset and disturbed, and decided that I would address my findings with Johnny the next day after work. The next day came, and the only thing I remember is that one moment I was driving to work, and the next I woke up to machines beeping around me and nurses surrounding me. My head was throbbing and I was very thirsty. I felt really weak, but I managed to ask the nurses to give me some water. After I drank water, I lay back down and tried to go back to sleep so I could get rid of the headache. I tried to move my legs in a different position to get more comfortable, but they wouldn't move. At first I was confused, but then I began panicking. I called out to the nurse and told her that I couldn't feel my legs. The nurse called the doctor immediately. He ran some tests where he poked and prodded my legs to confirm if I could feel anything. Around this time, Johnny walked into the room. He saw the frenzy and asked what was happening. One of the nurses filled him in and he seemed very worried. I was rushed for some more testing. After a while, the doctor told me that I was paralyzed. I felt my world shatter. Johnny walked out of the room. I thought it was because he was too overwhelmed with concern and grief for me. While Johnny was out of the room, I struggled to grapple with my new reality for a little while. The doctor gave me a little time before asking me if I was doing okay. "How are you feeling?" "Not good. I just got the most devastating news of my life." "I know, and I really am sorry that this has happened to you, but you need to get some rest." "I don't think I can rest. My mind is too much of a mess." "I can imagine. You just need to eat your meals and the nurses will administer the necessary medications for you. They are strong, so you'll end up falling asleep easily." "What use is all that? I'm going to be disabled. I might as well rot in here." "I know that everything seems hopeless right now, but there's always some hope that you can recover feeling in your legs." "What? Really?" "While your spinal cord is pretty damaged, it is still fairly treatable." "Are you absolutely sure, doctor?" "Yes, but—" "But what?" "Since the damage is pretty significant, it'll take a long while. It will also be very rigorous and overall will put a huge strain on your physical and mental health. I don't mind any of that. I'll do it all. Just please, heal me. Of course. But before that, you need to do as I said. Eat your meals and let your body heal all your other injuries. Yes, doctor. I felt some relief knowing that my paralysis was not going to be permanent. There was still a chance for me to get better, and I was going to try my hardest to get back to where I used to be. Not long after the doctor left, the nurses filled me in on what had happened to me. Apparently, I got T-boned at an intersection and my car crashed into the side of the road. The impact of the crash is what resulted in my spinal cord injury, along with my broken collarbone and my bruised face. I had been in a coma for a week and only just came to and was horrified at what had happened. I was always a very careful driver, and for something this careless to happen was insane to me. I asked them if the one who crashed into me was okay, and they told me that he had been arrested for driving under the influence. Apparently, the man who crashed into me had a record-breaking amount of alcohol in his system, along with a mix of other drugs. He had been returning back home from a party and was barely awake when he crashed into me. He escaped with just a few scratches. I was upset and angry, but at the same time glad that he was arrested for his crime. The nurses brought me my meal around then, and when I was done eating, they gave me my medications. The doctor was not joking when he said that they were strong, because within the span of 15 minutes, I began to feel drowsy, and within the next 5 minutes, I was fast asleep. When I next woke up, it was the next day. I thought I was alone, at least that's what I thought, because my room was silent except for the sounds of the machine I was hooked up to. I carefully looked around the room and saw my mom sitting uncomfortably on the chair in the room and dozing off. I cleared my throat to alert her that I was awake. She awoke with a start and looked confused for a second before rushing over to me. She held my face in her hands and scanned my face. Tears ran down her face as she gingerly hugged me. I will admit that I cried a little too. She smoothed my hair back and gave me a kiss on my forehead. I could sense how scared she had been because of how close she had been to losing me. I felt horrible that she had been in that position, but on the bright side, I was still alive and kicking. I held her hand and asked her how she was feeling. "How are you feeling, Mom?" "Silly girl, that's a question I'm supposed to ask you." "I'm as okay as I can feel right now." "Are you in a lot of pain?" "I should be, but the medicines they're giving me are doing a great job of not letting me feel any of the pain." "That's good." I was so scared, Laura. "I can imagine, Mom. I promise I was being safe." "Oh, honey, I know. I just don't know why the universe had to be so cruel towards you." "I know, but at least there's some hope for me. It'll be a while, but I should be able to start walking eventually." "That's a huge relief. Although, even if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be right by your side the entire time. I'd like to be a little more optimistic about the future, but I'm grateful for you, Mom. Say, where's Johnny? I haven't seen him much since you got into the accident." "I have no idea. He was there when I woke up, but he left when the doctor told me I was paralyzed, and I haven't seen him since." "How could he just leave like that?" "I don't know why he did that. I thought he was just grieving for me, but it's been a while." "I'm going to call him and give him a piece of my mind." "You do that. I'm beginning to feel sleepy again." "Yes, sweetie. You just go to sleep. I'll handle everything." As I fell asleep, I was very aware of just how hurt I felt that Johnny had been absent ever since I got diagnosed. I barely got to speak to him before the diagnosis, too, because he wasn't in the room until I started panicking about the lack of feeling in my legs. When I next woke up, my mother was yelling on the phone. She was yelling a bunch of insults and demanded that they come to my room. My head was throbbing once again, and the medicine's effects wore off, so I was feeling all the pain that I was supposed to feel. I pressed the buzzer for the nurse, who entered my room shortly after and gave me the medicines I needed. Once I was feeling much better, I asked my mom who she had been talking to. My mom looked upset and told me not to worry about it. I could tell something was bothering her a lot, so I pressed a little more, and she told me that she had been speaking to Johnny. Apparently, he was out with a friend. She also told me that she had asked the nurses, and he had barely ever come over when I was in a coma. That felt even more painful than all the injuries on my body, if I'm being honest. My mom obviously lost her cool at him for being so nonchalant. He apparently kept trying to play off my accident as no big deal, but my mom started yelling at him for even trying to treat almost dying so casually. She told him that she expected to see him in my room in 1 hour, or he would not hear the end of it from her. I hated that my mom had to butt in to get Johnny to be by my side, but he listened to her and he came to my room. He brought with him Deborah. I was already upset that Johnny wasn't there with me, so I was very much not keen on meeting Deborah. My mom left the room to give us space to converse. "Where have you been, Johnny?" "I've been busy." "Too busy to come and see your injured wife?" "Well, you serve him no purpose now, so I see no reason for him to spend time on you." "Excuse me?" "Yesterday Johnny called me upset that you were paralyzed. He was fully ready to stay with you, but I helped him see how stupid that was." "What? Why is that stupid?" "Look, Laura, we've already been struggling in our relationship. The only reason that I even stayed was because you brought in a lot of money. But now with your paralysis, you won't even be able to work. You'll be confined to your bed, and I'll have to take care of you for the rest of our lives." "Didn't we promise each other that we'd be there for each other in sickness and in health?" "Sure, but I didn't mean paralysis by that." What he's trying to say is that he sees no use of you anymore. Finally, he's going to leave you. "Why are you doing this to me?" "You know that I think my son deserves so much better than you. The only thing you had going for you was your business. But you'll lose that too now." "Johnny, please don't leave me right now." "Ugh, were you always this desperate? I'll serve you with divorce papers tomorrow at around noon. Oh, honey, don't forget you have a date tomorrow at 1. So make it quick." "Date?" "I've set him up with a much prettier girl. Someone who I actually approve of. Look at how happy he is." My entire world was falling apart right before my eyes. The tears started flowing before I was even aware. Johnny looked at me with disgust, while Deborah looked at me like she had just won a battle. She grabbed Johnny's arm, and the two of them left me in my room to cry. My mom walked back in and immediately rushed to my side to ask me what was wrong. Through my sobs, I was able to tell her what had happened. I had never seen her so angry before. She left my room to find Deborah and Johnny, but she had missed them. She came back and held me as I cried for hours until I was exhausted enough to fall back asleep. The next day, I got served with divorce papers. I numbly signed them and watched as Deborah's face flooded with glee while Johnny just looked relieved. It made me wonder how horrible of a person you have to be to actually leave someone you love when they're at their most vulnerable. For the next few weeks after my divorce, I was overcome with depression. I felt like a whole piece of me had vanished, and my world just lost all its color. My mom let me feel what I was feeling without saying a word. She felt really bad for me, but she tried to cheer me up in her own little ways by sneaking in my favorite foods or bringing fresh flowers every morning. After my collar fracture had healed nicely and the doctor concluded that I was good to go for physical therapy along with the medications that came with treating my paralysis, he helped me set up with a good physical therapist, and I was set to start therapy in a week. I'll be honest, at this point I wanted to do nothing. I just wanted to lay in bed all day and cry, and that's what I did initially. I skipped my first 2 therapy appointments because I saw no use of it. But then my mom had had enough of me wallowing in my sadness. "That's it. I've had enough of your moping about." "What are you talking about?" "I know that what you're going through is beyond upsetting. I've been trying my best to sympathize with you, but how long will you keep feeling sad for yourself? Mom, you don't get it. I'm way below rock bottom. Not a single thing is going right. I know, but you have the power to at least make some things right. You just aren't doing it, and that's making you feel even more miserable. What good will make things right do? It's just a lot of effort on my part for a result that I may not even get. Some results are better than no results. Don't you want to get back at Johnny and Deborah for what they did to you? Of course, but how? How will this battered and useless body of mine do anything from now on? Your body may be battered, but it is not useless. You still have a functioning brain and mind. Use them. Just because you can't do certain things, it doesn't mean that you can't do anything. What do you want me to do? Start working again. You're your own boss, so I'm sure you can start working from home. And for God's sake, start going for your physical therapy. Okay, but you should know I'm only doing this to get you to stop nagging me. As long as you're doing it, I don't care. Mom was right. Nothing would change if I kept wallowing in self-pity. I started working from home the next day. Thankfully, my business partner and best friend had kept the business running while I was away. She had dropped in every once in a while to check up on me, but there had been so much to do without me there that she was too busy to frequently meet me. Regardless, I was able to finally lighten her workload. We held a team meeting after I rejoined, and everyone expressed their concerns for me, but I assured them that I was doing fine. I quickly realized just how much I had missed working and quickly got into a good routine with work. My mom was happy to see me getting back to my old self. I also began going for physical therapy regularly, about 3 times a week. At first, it was super humiliating to try to walk. I had to be supported, and I could barely keep myself standing upright. I will admit that after the first week of physical therapy, I did contemplate quitting it. But then I happened to come across Johnny's post on Facebook. It was a picture of him getting married to some woman. The woman looked at least 10 years younger than him, and a quick look into her account told me that I had guessed correctly. I couldn't believe my eyes. It had only been a few months since Johnny and I divorced, and he was already with someone else. What was even more infuriating was that he had captioned the post with, "Sometimes you have to waste time on something useless to find something useful." I was seeing red at that moment. I wanted nothing more than to get back at him and Deborah. Right then and there, I decided to start working my butt off to not only get back to how I was before the accident, but to surpass it. Every time I thought about giving up, I simply remembered Johnny's post, and I was all fired up. The next 6 years of my life saw a lot of progress. The first 2 years were spent relearning how to walk. By the end of 2 years, I was walking pretty well, although I did need to use a cane for safety purposes. For the next 4 years, I poured my heart and soul into my business. Pretty quickly, my company became a big name. I was living in the lap of luxury, but I was still not fully satisfied. I needed to get back at Johnny and Deborah. And then the perfect opportunity fell into my lap. Johnny's company was going under. They were struggling and in desperate need of someone to finance them. My company proposed a merger with us having a majority of the shares and profits, thereby giving us more power in the boardroom. They were desperate enough to agree to these terms. First thing I did when we made the merger official was to have a meeting with all the company's staff. When Johnny saw me walk in, he looked shocked. I walked in, not only without a cane, but in very high heels. That's right, I had fully recovered. I addressed everyone and told them that I would be the new CEO. I told them that there would not be a need for as many employees, so some of them would be either getting laid off or transferred to a different department. Of course, there was only one person who was going to get laid off, and that was Johnny. Johnny managed to corner after the meeting. "What the hell happened to you?" "What do you mean?" "Don't play stupid. The last time I saw you, you were paralyzed. How are you walking again?" Oh, did I not tell you? Right after you left me alone when the doctor told me I was paralyzed, he also told me that I was curable. It only took some therapy for me to be fully walking again. So you lied to me? How could I have lied to you, Johnny? You were barely there. And the one time that I was actually able to talk to you, you asked for a divorce. So, is this what this is? Revenge? Is that why you came back? Bold of you to assume that after everything I went through, I would want to waste my time on something as useless as you. So, you're going to be professional with this, right? I have a baby on the way and I would really appreciate it if you let me keep working here. Oh, wait, wasn't it you who said that sometimes we have to waste our time on useless things before we find something useful? Please don't do this. Funnily enough, I already have your letter of termination typed up and signed. You're fired. You jerk, how could you? You know that I need this job right now. And I needed you when I was at my worst in the hospital, but you left me for someone else. I hope you enjoy this taste of your own medicine. I walked out of there with my head held high. After work ended, I got a lot of calls and texts from Deborah calling me a disgusting and vile person. But I swiftly reminded her of what she did to me, and I told her that she was free to help her son in the same way she helped him realize just how useless I was. The taste of victory is really sweet. I finally feel vindicated, and I have a lot of people to thank. Without any of their help and support, I wouldn't be able to do what I did. If there's one thing I learned through all of this, it is that when you reach rock bottom, there's only one way to go, and that's up.